This is a black snail pattern 0417, which is a 1930s corset. I am working on it for my 1930s dress that I plan on wearing this Christmas. And I've got the lining and the outside all stitched up. Right now I am just working on sewing in the boning channels and also the cording channels. And I did decide to do the whole thing hand sewn, more just because I felt like it than any real reason. As you can see, I've got almost half of the cording done. I do still need to do this back panel and then of course repeat everything again on this side, but we are getting close. And then I do also plan on making the busk for this, mostly just because I could easily find one online, but from what I was reading, for it to be a hardwood, I just kind of have this thing for walnut, and so I think that it's a pretty easy project, so I plan on making that. I also haven't decided yet if I am going to be doing hand-sewn eyelets or just use metal eyelets on it. I was gave myself a timeline on finishing this up, and that was supposed to be last Friday. It is Thursday the following week, so I am already almost a week overdue on this. So I'm starting to think that I should just do metal eyelets and be done with it. I've already read a couple things about how this time period it could kind of go either way. So I might just do metal, but it just feels like since I did all this hand stitching on it, it would be kind of a bummer to do metal. We'll just see. Again, it's cotton. Both layers are cotton. The lining is just like a cotton kind of twill. And then the exterior fabric is a cotton satin. And it came from Joann's, so I don't think it's super high quality, but it just kind of has that luster of satin, which is really cool for it being cotton. And as you can see, it frays like crazy, but I think, you know, that's just the satin weave. I mean, if it was a higher quality, it might not be as bad, but I think a lot of it has to do with the kind of fabric that it is. The gussets in this I really kind of struggled with, not really because of the pattern itself, but just because I think I was probably not inserting them quite right. It also doesn't help that, again, this is a very easy to fray fabric, so as you can see in the corners here, it's already frayed pretty badly. I am gonna have to probably go over and stitch it. I probably should have stitched around there like a satin stitch before I put it together. I did do that on one of the back gussets, but I just hated the way it looked. So I think I need to try to get like a nicer, thicker thread to try to do this again for the rest of it, and I guess I'll just stitch through both layers then after I've probably finished it with all the cording and binding and all of that. This is kind of a mashup of a couple sizes. I did the US size 20, which was pretty good from like my natural waist and up, but like from natural waist and down, like in the hips, it was a little too much of a gap in the back. So I did kind of alter the pattern and make it a little wider on the back. So hopefully that will work out well. I am planning on fan lacing, so that way I can get it on and off myself without having to have any help. The pattern also did call for using steel bones in the larger sizes, especially on either side of the eyelets. I was gonna just go ahead and steel bone the whole thing, but decided against that, just because I really didn't want to spend like $35 on steel bones. I have a fair number, but of course not the right sizes. And then I had considered using zip ties, but the zip ties that I had were, of course, about 3 inches too short on almost all of them. There's most of these, for my size at least, were 16 plus inches long for the bones. So I decided to go ahead and try synthetic whalebone. This is my first time using it, and I was really surprised at how narrow it is. I guess if I would have been paying more attention when I bought it and what the millimeter sizing actually equaled on that, that wouldn't have been a surprise to me. And it's not an issue at all. All the channels are, of course, sized to, you know, fit that. And I guess if you kind of compare it to a zip tie, there's really not a size difference. It just feels like 5 yards of it should be more than that, but it's cool because when it was shipped to me then, it wasn't like, you know, a crazy ton for shipping and handling on it. And then I am also going to be doing just a cotton twill kind of folded over for the binding on this. I just really didn't want to mess with making binding. I probably had plenty of this blue fabric that I could have self-bound it, but the thought of making bias tape out of this fabric was a little and then I also thought this was going to be plenty to lace, but now that I see it on the card, there is no way. So I'm pretty sure I have more of this lacing that I will be able to use to lace it as well. Otherwise, I'm sure I could certainly use something else. So now that I am looking at my notes on this project, I am realizing that I am actually a couple weeks behind, so I really need to get going. The day that I plan on wearing this is going to be Black Friday, and so I really am busy that time of year. I don't have time to be trying to mess with this project at the last second. That's what I did last year and didn't end up finishing it, and then ended up hating the material that I used anyway, so started over. I had been looking at doing this particular style of sleeve with the short sleeve underneath and then like an organza over, but I think I'm gonna cheap out and just do one sleeve instead of basically twice the material for that. And I just need to get going on it. Almost done. Well, I say almost, but there's really a fair amount of stitching left to go on it, but another day or two really dedicated on it here and I should be done. So I've reached the point now where I've got all the boning and cording channels stitched in, and I went ahead and did the cording sections, and then I also have bound the top half and using just twill tape folded over, and then here is the drawstring, so if you wanted to tighten up the bust as needed you can, and then I've also got the top pocket here stitched for the busk to go in. So what I think I am going to go ahead and move on to next before I put bones in, there are a couple bones in it, just ones that had to be done from the top. I did the top edge because the straps I knew were going to be the biggest pain to bind, so I got the worst part out of the way first. But before I'm dealing with it being all boned and kind of rigid and flipping kind of all over the place, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the eyelets. I did go ahead and decide just to do metal ones because I just really need to finish this project, so that I think is where I'm going to go to next. So at some point years ago for some corset, I bought the die, I guess, or stamp, whatever you would call it, for putting in grommets, and I also thankfully bought a huge old bag of grommets. So I think this is going to work for this one. Should have plenty to get it done, and black will look okay with this. So all I have to do now is put them in. And I've got grommets in, at least on this half. Now just to do the other half, but this only took me about 10 or 15 minutes, so not a big deal. So my stays are almost done. I am currently working on the busk. It is all done. It is just being varnished right now. It's still a little tacky, so can't really use it to try it on right at this second, but I'm pretty happy with how that's turning out. And then the sleeves, I just need to, or not the sleeves, but the shoulder tabs, I just need to put in a string for that. I probably should just almost just sew them because I don't really see it being something that I want to adjust. I was gonna do the fan lacing, But then I was watching a video from Prior Attire where she just had a really long lace and just pulled it over her head and tightened it down. And you know, I tried that. I actually stole the lace from my red threaded 1860's corset. It's basically just one or two really long shoelaces, and so that seemed to work, and so we'll go ahead and give it a try. And this isn't the, well, I don't plan on wearing this chemise, but it's kind of a low priority right now. If I don't get it done in time for wearing this, then this one should do the trick. And kind of the trick to trying to lace these yourself is you just kind of try to start at the top and the bottom and kind of walk your fingers down and tighten as you go. But the problem is if you have too much extra length in there, it gets kind of hard. There we go. The funny thing is, I was kind of concerned about them being too small in the waist and the hips, and thinking it would be plenty big in the chest, but it actually looks like waist and hips are fine, and chest should have been a little bit bigger, but that's okay. And since you've got this crazy long lacing, you kind of end up with this big crazy bow in the front, but that's okay. The cups, I think, ended up working out pretty well. I almost don't really need the drawstring. I think it would have just been kind of fine as is. These straps are just so wonky on me. Probably should have, I don't know. Oh well. I think if I tighten it down, there goes my safety pin, being weird on me. Okay, so then, for the time being, until my busk is finished, I've just got a stand-in chunk of ruler. Yeah, I don't think there's not like a discernible, you know, like spillage over the top. So I think chest is pretty good. Pretty good range of movement. I'm gonna go ahead and take some measurements so that I can start working on the bodice of the dress, and then also so that I know what length waistband to put on my, I've got 2 tucked petticoats done. I just need to do the waistband on them. I have started on my corded petticoat, but I really need to get that done, and then go ahead and starch all 3 of them. And that should pretty much do it for undergarments, unless I do get around to trying to do a shift.